Welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Dominic Tamaro, and I'm the Vice Chair for Education in the Department of Medicine at the Alpert Medical School. I'm based at Rhode Island Hospital in Providence, Rhode Island. And this is one in a series of sessions in our financial literacy curriculum. And today, I'm joined by Dr. Ravi Gupta. Dr. Gupta is based at NYU Langone, Suffolk, where he serves as the Chief Medical Officer. But before that, he spent many years as both an Associate Residency Director and then subsequently as an Internal Medicine Residency Director. Dr. Gupta holds a Master's in Science degree in Healthcare Leadership and Management. That combination of understanding the business and leadership aspects of medicine, together with his role mentoring many residents and students over the years, make him uniquely qualified to give some advice for new interns and residents on how to manage personal finances. So with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Ravi Gupta, and he'll talk to us a little bit about some of his priorities, and then we'll have some discussion about those areas of advice. Ravi, take it away.
Well, Dom, first of all, thank you for having me on the program. It really is a wonderful opportunity to get to spend some time with you. I just wanted to reiterate to the audience how absolutely wonderful Brown University is. The time I spent there really was key to putting me on the footing to having a really wonderful career. And I'm forever grateful to Dom, the residency program, the faculty at Brown University for everything they did for me during that time. You have a really wonderful group of educators and administrators there, and I continue to benefit from their knowledge and advice to this day. Just with regards to the topic at hand, I think that for a lot of brand new residents and new faculty, the idea of managing their finances and thinking about their financial future is something that is often foreign to them. When you go through medical education and training, very little time is devoted to financial education. There are seminars on billing and coding, a little bit, oftentimes about the general finances of the healthcare system in terms of Medicare and Medicaid and how those programs are paid for and how it impacts patients, but very little on personal financial advice and really how to structure and manage your life. So I'm really glad to see that this topic is being addressed by you, Dom, and by a lot more medical educators throughout the country. In terms of what we were discussing around brand new residents, I think that for a lot of residents, when they enter into training, it's often the first time that they're earning a substantial income. Now, that's not universally true. There are people who have had careers outside of medicine that then go to medical school and return and come in as interns. But for the vast majority, I've found the first year of residency in July is the first time they're getting a real paycheck. In the past, they've largely been paying institutions just to work 70 or 80 hours a week and study. So that in and of itself can be a brand new experience. What I have discovered in talking to a lot of interns is that they have no idea around the fundamental aspects of managing an income and their personal finances. So they won't have a basic spreadsheet, for instance, that tracks their expenses. I think that's very important. They don't appreciate early on how important it is to contribute to a 403B or a 401k to help to match their retirement savings. Many institutions will match a portion of what you contribute to your retirement savings, and many interns are ignorant of that. And so some of them elect not to contribute because they think that they need every single dollar. And there are a variety of tax advantages and other benefits of putting money in retirement accounts that you can't recoup in the future. The biggest benefit is compounded interest in time. And the tax advantage of not having to pay income taxes on the amount of money that you put in. And there's different structures to those accounts. We can talk more about that later. But I think the most important thing that an intern can do is to actually sit down and take an inventory of their spending, their needs, and what the options are for their future when they start earning an income. And many of them don't do that because they're so consumed with the clinical aspects of learning their specialty.
I read a statistic And one of our other speakers commented on the fact that retirement accounts, saving for retirement, if you save a dollar amount between ages 25 and 35, at the end of your career, let's say you retire at 65, that if you just save for those 10 years, 25 to 35, and made no other contributions, you would have the same amount of retirement savings as someone who didn't contribute and only started contributing from 35 until they turned 65. That's the power of compounding interest and time. And I'll point out, there are some organizations that don't offer retirement accounts for their trainees. What other options have you seen residents take advantage of in that case?
There are a multitude of financial institutions that will offer you retirement accounts. You can open up a Roth IRA, you can open up a standard IRA, and you should certainly, most interns will have a relationship with a bank where they're depositing their paychecks. They should reach out to those institutions and see what they have available. And many of them are affiliated with other financial firms. For instance, Bank of America is affiliated with Merrill Lynch. Now, the thing that they should be cognizant of is that many of the brokers that they'll be put in touch with around those retirement accounts do earn commissions based upon their investments. So they may provide them other advice unrelated to their specific retirement accounts that's beneficial to that broker in terms of earning a commission, but may not be beneficial to that intern. And this is certainly something that attending should take advantage of. But even at the intern and resident level, they should be very, very careful of the advice that paid brokers give them. And they should think about enlisting the help of somebody like a fiduciary expert. And that's somebody whose interest is really only in making sure that you invest in cost-efficient investments that are going to yield a positive outcome for you and is unrelated to any commission that they earn. In fact, they shouldn't be earning any commission off of the advice they give you. You should be paying them for that. I don't necessarily advocate for interns to do that. So just setting up a very straightforward IRA or Roth IRA should be something that a bank can help you with. But there are other organizations like Fidelity Investments that can help you set these accounts up if your institution doesn't offer it. Most hospitals do offer this for their employees. And so I really would suggest they reach out to their HR specialist to connect them with somebody because they may also have, if they don't offer it, companies and firms that they would recommend. The other thing beyond the retirement account for new interns that I think is important is that they set up a savings account and have an emergency fund. Because if you don't have that, if your car breaks down, or God forbid you have another major expense that is unexpected, you don't want to utilize high interest credit cards or other forms of debt to manage those emergencies, because that can put you into a vicious cycle of essentially accumulating more and more debt before you even start earning as an attending. That can be very difficult to dig your way out of. It can also set up some bad habits. So I think beyond the retirement investment, if you don't have a basic emergency account, and by that I would say for an intern, 3 months of income, and if you can't manage that, even 6 weeks, it would really, really be helpful for your personal finances and actually for reducing stress. Because I think it can be extremely, extremely challenging when an intern or second year or third year resident doesn't have the financial wherewithal to manage an emergency. So think about that carefully when you begin your residency training.
Automobiles seem to be the number one reason that people will dip into their emergency fund. A car that breaks down because they've been driving it, it's a secondhand car and they need a new car. And if they're saving for retirement and they're paying for their expenses like rent, where is that money going to come from? Some of those things are going to have to be put on hold, or as you point out, paid through a credit card, which is a very expensive way to essentially get a loan. Our emergency fund is of critical importance. That's probably the first thing that should be established to make sure that you can pay for your life in a worry-free area. And it should be in an account that is relatively liquid, meaning it can be accessed easily without delay. When you need new tires or new brakes, you need them now.
Say that oftentimes, the banks will offer you the opportunity to put money into a high yield savings account. That's a very reasonable place to park this money. A general savings account will offer you almost no interest. A high yield savings account, although not a tremendous amount, it might offer you 3 to 4% interest. And that's a very reasonable place to stow your money because you can access it right away. I wouldn't lock it away in something like a CD, a certificate of deposit, or another investment vehicle, because this is really the money that you need potentially right away. So that you should have no barrier in accessing it, as you just mentioned earlier. Since you mentioned cars, the other thing that I would be careful of is allowing lifestyle creep, particularly as it relates to cars. I personally love cars. So when I was an intern and resident, I probably had a car that cost a bit more than it should have to maintain and to fuel. So that was a personal mistake that I made. But I think that it's very important to get a reliable car that's ideally inexpensive to maintain and fits well within your budget. But nothing more as an intern and resident. And when you become an attending, you'll be tempted to buy a very fancy car, something you like and enjoy, because you'll finally have the wherewithal to do so. My suggestion is not to do that and to essentially live as you would as a resident for at least a couple of years. Assess your finances, save, get a good idea of what your budget is. And then, if you're doing very well and you've been investing well and you feel comfortable, you may want to consider upgrading your vehicle at that point. But that's an easy trap to fall into.
We have about 16 or 17 modules in this financial literacy curriculum. And a third to almost a half of them, the comment of living within one's means is made. And I think that is absolutely critical. I will point out before we go on that we do have a module on savings and one on saving for retirement specifically. And in those modules, we have some definitions, fiduciary and what is a Roth IRA versus a traditional IRA. So we cover those. And so for those that are interested in learning more about that, it's really beyond the scope of today's discussion. I point you to those which are elsewhere in our financial literacy curriculum.
The only thing that I would say around the various IRAs at their most fundamental level, our Roth IRA is essentially money that you're putting in post-tax. And when you withdraw it, you don't have to pay taxes on the dividends and the amount that you're withdrawing. A traditional IRA, you get a tax benefit. You're not paying taxes upfront on it. But when you withdraw the amount for after you're retired, you're paying taxes on it. And there's some income-related differences in terms of when you can contribute to one account versus the other. But it's important to understand that because as a resident, you can very easily start a Roth IRA. When you have a higher income, there's some complexity. You can still utilize Roth, but there's more complexity to utilizing that instrument. So definitely worth understanding, and I would recommend that module to you.
It's really a question of not will you pay taxes, but when you pay taxes. And interns and residents are in a lower tax bracket now than they will be as attendings. And so Roth IRAs make a great deal of sense for people starting out. Ravi, you mentioned a spreadsheet to get a hold of your finances. Tell me a little bit, maybe go into a little more detail about the importance of budgeting.
Well, you had mentioned being very careful about establishing a lifestyle that isn't beyond your means. If you don't create a budget, you don't know what's beyond your means. You just spend day to day, and particularly now with all the digitally enabled tools we have to spend, it's very easy to not keep track of how much you're spending. People subscribe to numerous services, music streaming services, television services, They have Apple Pay on their phones. And so you go to a store, you never physically take out cash, you tap your phone. And so those interactions, all the studies have demonstrated, are designed to essentially separate you from being conscious about how you spend your money. When you actually have to open your wallet and take out cash and pay someone, mentally, that's a different interaction and transaction than if you're doing it digitally. Not that people are lazy or that they don't care about their finances. It really is designed to allow you to become less cognizant of how you're spending. So remember that. The counter to that is that there are a lot of tools that you can use to automate and to track your spending now that didn't exist in the past. There are a variety of apps that can help you to track spending. There are some that can help to track down the subscriptions that you're utilizing, and you may be subscribing to, a newspaper that costs you $20 a month, like the Washington Post or the New York Times, that you didn't realize that you don't need anymore. So it can highlight those and help to streamline some of your subscriptions. But I think it's very important to keep track of your fixed spending, things that you must spend every month, and then your variable spending. So your rent, your car payment, those would be fixed spending amounts that you really can't change unless you break a contract. And then there's variable spending, going out to eat at restaurants, doing things for entertainment, seeing a show. That's all variable, and you have control over that portion of your spending. And you should really scrutinize that and be careful as a resident in particular, because your income is limited. And if you are able to manage that very carefully, you'll be able to save in a way that maybe you didn't anticipate before if you hadn't kept track of those items. So I would say use electronic tools, use applications that can automatically track your spending, and be deliberate and intentional about every dollar that comes out of your account.
One is called YNAB, You Need a Budget, YNAB. There's Quick and Simplify. And then there's also Rocket Money. And I've tried all three of these. And I find the latter, the Rocket Money, is to be the easiest. It may not have all the bells and whistles of some of the others, but really it's what you're going to actually use. Because as Robbie said, keeping track of your spending is critical to living within your means.
I've had some experience with residents and new faculty using Quick and Simplify. And they've liked it in part because it ties back to the main Quicken accounts, which makes their taxes easier. So, I think that there's benefits to all of those. I've heard positive things about Rocket as well, but since we can mention them, I think that those are really good tools.
Another concept, and maybe Robbie, you can comment on this, is this idea of pay yourself first as a way of helping you stay within your budget or within your means.
No, I think that's a great strategy. And the way I've seen that concept work is essentially you automate your savings. So you can only spend a certain amount per month. And once you've established a baseline budget and an understanding of what your fixed costs are and what you on average need to spend per month to live a reasonable life, then you can say, for instance, every month I'm going to put away $300 if you're a resident, and make sure that every time your paycheck comes in, if you're paid, twice a month, $150 immediately goes into savings that then you can even automatically distribute to various accounts if you wanted to, and you can automate every component of it. When you do that, you never have the money to spend in your account because it's already been attributed to savings. And I think for a lot of people, that's very helpful, and it enforces a discipline that you may not otherwise have. And the earlier that you can do that, the better in my mind. So I think that that's a great strategy for a lot of people. There are a minority of folks who are disciplined enough that they go beyond that strategy and they're able to track their spending and adjust items per month and even per day and per week. If you're one of those people and are an aggressive saver and you know that already, then that doesn't apply to you. You don't need to use this strategy. But if you struggle with saving, I think that's a great tool to utilize.
I have one highly organized resident who his direct deposit goes into his checking account, and then he set up automatic transfers from that checking account into one account in the same bank. They all talk to each other. The same bank for bills and essential things like rent, an automatic transfer into another account that is just for fun, and then his retirement savings comes right off the top. And then when he needs to replenish his emergency supply, he sets up another account for that. So he really just focuses on the account that has the money for fun that he can use to go out to dinner or go to the movies or what have you. Everything else is automated, and importantly, it's out of his line of sight.
And I think that's very important for a lot of people, because if they see it in their account, then they're tempted to spend it. So, you know, I definitely endorse that strategy for the majority of trainees and, of course, faculty as well. But again, if you are someone, there are those people that love to micromanage their money and are aggressive savers, and that's not for you. But for everybody else, I'd say for 90% of people, it's a very good strategy.
So I think this has been a lot of good advice. The elephant in the room is the fact that residents now come to their training programs with massive amounts of debt, $200,000-$300,000 worth of debt. And so some of the people looking at this video are saying, well, they haven't talked about the fact that one of my fixed expenses is this huge debt that I have to service. What advice do you have for the residents who are working off their debt?
You know, I think that's a tremendously challenging place to start your residency career and your life as a faculty member from. And I completely understand the stress that is associated with that, having a substantial debt burden as you enter training. What I have seen some trainees do, unfortunately, is to ignore it as if it doesn't exist. And because they ignore that debt, they tend to take on even more debt and make poor financial decisions because they feel like they can never dig out from the mountain of debt that they've accumulated throughout the course of their undergraduate and graduate careers, and even just living expenses related to those training periods. So I think that the first thing you have to do is to be honest about your total debt load and to think about what your strategy is going to be for repayment, and to come up with a plan for that and to stick to it. If you aren't strategic about it and come up with a plan, that stress is never going to get better. And even as your income increases, you can lose a substantial amount to that debt repayment because you haven't been strategic in thinking about it. Now, there are different programs that residents can enter into that can facilitate payment. Some are federal programs. There are also some regional and state-based programs. And so depending on the employer that you choose to work with after residency, if you work for a Fair Qualified Health Center, if you work for a nonprofit organization, there are often programs that allow you to have the organization help to handle your debt. And those can be tremendously beneficial to you if you have private versus federal loans. There's also differences in the programs that are available. So I would certainly recommend meeting with a specialist that can help to guide you depending on your individual debt burden and the various strategies that are out there, depending on the choice of employment that you're going to undertake or any other commitments you may have. But certainly it's a tremendous factor, and the biggest challenge related to it is avoiding a strategy around how to repay the debt. And there's not one universal answer that works for everyone. And I think that that's important to recognize as well. The other thing that I would also say is that educational debt is just another form of debt. So oftentimes people psychologically don't think of it that way. They view it as something that has to be repaid very aggressively and with a greater sense of stress and emotion than other forms of debt. I would not do that. I would really think of it as just another form of debt and structure it into your overall financial plan and strategy. And there may be opportunities to pay it down that might feel good, but aren't necessarily the best financial decision. So make sure that you are very intentional and thoughtful around what you're going to do with student debt.
And I think that's very wise. I think I've seen that as well. People regard educational debt as something they're worried about and they want to aggressively pay off. But that debt may carry an interest rate that's far below what a credit card at 25 to 30% interest would carry. And that's a much more damaging type of of debt and loan. So certainly, the higher the interest rate, the more aggressive you should be at both avoiding as well as paying off that debt. I would also suggest that people make use of the resources at their sponsoring institution. The GME office, this will not be an unknown subject to your GME office, and they will often have the names of people you can speak with or experts on finance that can help you develop that strategy that Robbie was talking about, which is critically important. It's not a sweep it under the bed type of issue. It can really be a very difficult thing to catch up on if you've not done so early on.
At smaller institutions that may not have a very well-developed GME office as it pertains to debt counseling and financial resources, typically they'll link you into human resources, and they often do have good people that you can speak with around this. So don't feel like if you're at a smaller sponsoring institution where they may not have as many hands to help you in this area, that they have no resources. Almost always they do, and it's typically also in the context of employees. Remember, employees throughout the hospital, the medical assistants, the nursing staff, they often have similar concerns. So thankfully, even at institutions that don't have numerous programs and a tremendous GME office, they'll be able to help to at least guide you in the right direction for this.
So, Robbie, we've covered a lot of ground, and it's all been very valuable advice. Is there anything we haven't discussed?
Just one thing, and I think that relates to insurance coverage. For a lot of residents who first enter training, they often don't think about getting disability insurance. And the younger you are, the less costly insurance typically is when you establish it. So getting own occupation disability insurance, I think, is very important. Certainly the institution will provide you some basic, usually life insurance and short-term disability and sometimes long-term disability. And you can avail yourself to those policies while you are a resident and potentially a faculty member. But you may want to explore looking at organizations that provide that. The AMA does, American College of Physicians has some products, as well as independent companies. But my advice would be to shop around, to look at different companies and different policies. And to try to establish those policies early on, because as I mentioned earlier, the younger you are when you create them, the less costly they are. As you get older, and as you not necessarily older, but as you become more mature in your career, as a faculty member, you may want to consider something like umbrella insurance, again, to protect your assets should somebody, say, slip and fall on your property or have an accident. But I think that that's an important component of feeling at ease as your career progresses. And then the last thing that I'd say is that sort of your financial health, much like your career, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. So think carefully about the steps that you want to take at each stage. Understand that you're going to have to continuously save and build. And if you take on an intentional strategy around that, you'll be just fine. As a physician, even in the specialties that aren't the highest earning specialties, you're earning far more than the vast majority of people in this country. And so you have a tremendous number of opportunities available to you. You also have a lot of people who are going to try to reach into that income and use it for their own benefit. So just be wary of that as well.
Those are wise words. And I think the way to look at disability insurance is if you became disabled, whether temporarily or long-term, disability insurance is something that would assure that your bills are paid, that you're able to eat, you maintain a roof over your head while you are recovering. And so that's disability insurance is important. It's especially important in families. If you have a kid, or if you're married, or if you have anyone who depends on you, then your income really is supporting not just you, but other people who depend on you for their well-being. And so disability insurance becomes more important in those situations.
And the reason I mentioned own occupation is if you're in a subspecialty, for instance, if you're an interventional cardiologist, you may not be able to do certain procedures as a result of an unfortunate health event, and that can substantially impact your income, your ability to remain employed within that specialty. So getting long-term disability relating to your own occupation as you progress in your career could be of benefit. And that's why I think it's important.
Well, this was really greatly helpful, very insightful, and I think really covered the basics of what people should know, but what we often don't know. I know I made some bonehead moves from a financial decision-making standpoint when I was a resident, and would have appreciated some of the advice that you just shared with us now.
Well, thank you, Dom. It was a pleasure. I hope it was useful and helpful to people.
Indeed it was. Thanks a lot, Robbie.
Thank you.